Pretty much every color has leaked for the upcoming Pixel 10 phones, and there are some surprising new additions, but none as good as the panda color from the Pixel 2 days, unfortunately. We've discovered that some companies are playing fast and loose with how they measure foldable phone thickness, which sounds silly but could be tantamount to cheating consumers. And remember the guy we talked about last week who might face jail time for talking about retro emulation consoles? Well, he might not be so innocent. I'm C. Scott Brown, and it's time for a quick roundup of the biggest tech news that you need to know about. Our first story today is all about the rainbow of colors we can expect with the upcoming Google Pixel 10 series. And by rainbow of colors, I mean part of the rainbow of colors. Specifically greens and blues and maybe a tinge of yellow. So 3 of the colors of the rainbow? Anyway, let's start with the vanilla Pixel 10, which has the boldest and most vibrant color options. Typically, we have Obsidian, which Google has used for Pixels every year since it first came out in 2022 on the Pixel 7 series. This will be the standard black color for people who don't care what color their phone is, either because it's just going to go into a protective case, or they hate fun. You think I'm joking, but there are literally people out there who hate fun. Moving on, we have this light blue Pixel 10 that will land with the name Frost. I think this is taking the place of the usual porcelain model, as the Pixel 10 series does not appear to have a classic white color for some reason. After that, we have a darker blue called Indigo. I like this one a lot, as it's classy and professional while still being less boring than Obsidian. Finally, we have the loudest and most out there color in the series, Limoncello. Hold on, let me say it right. Limoncello. As you can see, this is a very bright yellowish green that is definitely a bold statement. The other 3 colors are trying to be subtle, but this one is totally in your face.
I'm in your face.
But what about the Pixel 10 Pro and Pixel 10 Pro XL? As usual, Google is keeping the color options the same across both variants of these phones. So whether you go big or go small with your Pro level Pixel, you're going to be stuck with the same 4 color options. First, we have Obsidian, of course. Nothing new to see here, as it looks just like the Pixel 10 and the various models in the Pixel 9 series. We also have Porcelain, which Google apparently abandoned for the vanilla Pixel 10, but is keeping around for the Pro models. Next, we have this cool gray-blue model that is brand new for the lineup. Google is calling this one Moonstone, which is a badass name if you ask me. It sounds like something from an old school SNES JRPG. Oh wait, that's because it is. There's a moonstone in Chrono Trigger. You travel back in time to leave it in the sun so it becomes the Sunstone, and then you can use that to create the best weapon for Luca. If you haven't played Chrono Trigger, you're missing out. It is a stone cold classic. We're talking about phone colors here, sorry. The last color is called Jade, and it is a less in-your-face version of Limoncello, keeping with the yellowish green tones. I'm not a fan of green, but I must admit that this looks not bad at all. Finally, let's check out what the Pixel 10 Pro Fold is going to offer. Interestingly, Google is only offering 2 colors for this one this year, and neither one of them are black or white. Instead, you're going to choose between Moonstone, the nifty gray-blue color on the other Pro models, or Jade, the greenish color. This is an interesting move considering foldable phones are traditionally marketed to productivity-focused customers, so only offering colorful models is a weird flex on Google's part. Still, if you spend nearly $2,000 on a phone, you're probably going to put it into a case, so the color of the phone probably doesn't matter much anyway. Obviously, everything I showed you here is a leak, and all were sourced from Android headlines. Typically, I would say that you need to take all this with a grain of salt because these designs aren't official, but they actually are official now. That's because Google showed off what the Pixel 10 will look like already, and it looks just like these renders. Obviously, the colorways might be incorrect, but if you didn't believe the leaks would be true when it comes to the basic designs of the phones, well, there you go. They are true. Google will launch the Pixel 10 series officially on August 20th, so mark your calendars for that. Oh, and if you're a big fan of Pixels, here's an interesting fact. So am I. In fact, I just created a new YouTube channel where I'll be talking a lot about Pixels, other smartphones, and tech in general. There's a link in the description for that, and there's a video up here that goes over why I'm a Pixel guy. Give it a watch if you have the time. Our next story is all about measuring the thickness of foldable phones. I know, this sounds incredibly boring, but I assure you that it is interesting, so stick with me here.
It's boring. You're boring, everybody. Quit boring everyone!
If you'll remember, earlier this month, Chinese smartphone company Honor launched the Magic V5, which it calls the world's slimmest foldable. Honor claims that when you measure the white model of the foldable in its closed state and ignore the camera bump, it is 8.8 millimeters thick. A short while after Honor launched this phone, South Korea's Samsung launched the Galaxy Z Fold 7. As with the Magic V5, Samsung claims its foldable is also 8.8 millimeters thick when folded and ignoring the camera bump. So wait, the phones are the same thickness? Well, maybe not. Here at Android Authority, we have a guy named Hadley Simons, who is a relentless reporter when it comes to companies pulling dodgy tricks to puff themselves up. Hadley saw in a social media post that the white version of the Honor Magic V5 might actually be ever so slightly thicker than the Galaxy Z Fold 7. But how could this be? The answer is that Honor appears to be measuring its foldables without the protective film covering the external and internal displays. We haven't been able to prove this, but removing these thin layers might be what's giving Honor the confidence to say that its foldable is actually thinner than the Galaxy Z Fold 7. The obvious problem here, though, is that 99% of people who use a foldable would never do so without the protective film that literally comes applied to the phone when you take it out of the box. So if Honor really is measuring the thickness of its phones without these layers, it's not being totally honest with consumers. I'll leave this up to you to decide if you think this is acceptable or not, but I highly encourage you to read Hadley's full article on this subject. He reached out to all the major manufacturers of foldable phones to figure out how they are measuring phones to see if there's a universally accepted way of doing so. I'll leave a link to Hadley's terrific work in the description, but don't go away just yet. I've got one more story to tell you. Our last story today is all about the YouTuber who goes by the name Once Were Nerd. If you watched last week's News Roundup video, you'll know that Once Were Nerd's home was raided by Italian authorities and over 30 retro gaming handhelds were confiscated, along with his personal smartphone. The YouTuber made a video talking about the ordeal and claimed he was being targeted unfairly for simply talking about and promoting emulation. As I said last week, emulation is legal, and owning hardware for the specific purpose of emulating games is also legal. If you haven't watched last week's roundup, I'll put a link up here, and I'll also pop a link in the description too. New information has come to light on this story, and it seems like Once Were Nerd may not be as innocent as we thought him to be. A different YouTuber called Monto Tech went back to look at Once Were Nerd's older content, and they found that he wasn't just talking about emulation consoles, but actually telling people how to download pirated ROMs. Remember, as I mentioned last week, the ROMs you play while using an emulator is where things can get legally murky, and it's definitely illegal if you can't prove you own an original version of that game. To make matters worse, Once More Nerd was also selling some of the consoles he used in his videos, and including ROMs with those sales. He was doing this privately through Telegram. So yeah, it seems that this case wasn't as cut and dry as we originally thought. Once More Nerd might be in trouble with Italian authorities because laws have been broken by selling pirated content and providing explicit instructions on how viewers can do their own pirating. Obviously, this is a serious legal matter and we don't want to jump to any conclusions, but yeah, it's not looking good right now. We reached out to Once More Nerd directly for comment on this, but he declined to give a statement due to the ongoing investigation, which is understandable. We'll let you know in a future video if he lets us know anything. You can also keep your eyes on AndroidAuthority.com for more. That's it for this roundup. If you want to dive deeper into these stories, be sure to check all the links down below. Remember to like and subscribe so you'll be notified as soon as the next roundup goes live. See you all soon.